I do a lot of work with children and families, so I've been thinking about how we're so conditioned in our lives to think of the separate self, and then we have to kind of unlearn it. And so I've been thinking about how would a child learn this earlier in his or her life? And it seems like one precondition would be that parents don't use their children for their happiness. That would be important as that they're not looking to their children to provide happiness for them. But I'm wondering, just developmentally, is it possible for children to not develop such a strong sense or any sense of a separate self?
I think part of the process of separating from your mother is a process of becoming a healthy individual with a healthy ego. In other words, it's a stage of development. It's not, for most people, it's a natural stage of development that like all stages of development in a healthy culture, a healthy being, would just be grown through. What happens in our society is that we develop more or less healthy egos and we stop there.
What do you mean by healthy ego?
I mean just a regular ego that's reasonably well adapted to society. It's someone that just functions as a healthy ego, who's separated from their mother and has a sense of themselves as a individual in the community. It's a natural stage of development, and would normally just be grown beyond. So what we're talking about here is a kind of post-egoic way of being. It's not going back to a pre-egoic way of being. It's right that a child knows, to begin with, the child can't distinguish between its body and its mother's body. In fact, it has more contact with its mother's body than it has with its own feet, for instance. It thinks that its mother's, if it could think, it feels more identified with its mother's breast than it does with its own feet, which appear to be kind of some blurry pink things off there in the distance, whereas Mama's breast is always nicely on my cheek. So the child has to learn. And as part of that process, it's inevitable in almost all cases to develop an identity with the body. It's just natural. And then part of the growing up process would be to grow beyond that simplistic and very limited and distorted view of our own identity. So I don't feel that one should try to prevent that happening in a child. I think if one deep in one's heart, if one relates to one's child or to any child, indeed any being, as they truly are, that's the most important thing, to hold that feeling understanding in our hearts and let that feeling understanding inform whatever relative relationship we have with them. Children are such sensitive beings that our predisposition, our fundamental predisposition is somehow communicated. So that if you smile sweetly at a child but you're actually angry and resentful inside, they know it. And because the child cannot process or rationalize what he's feeling, your resentment or anger goes in very deeply to the child. And as a result, it learns not to trust smiling people or whatever. So that's why the most important thing, more important than even what we say and do with our children, is how we truly feel about them. And if we hold in our hearts this feeling and understanding of the infinite being that they truly are, essentially are, and then just allow that to inform all the relative conversations and activities that we engage in with them. That's the most important thing. Because then what we respect most of all in them is what they truly are, the freedom that they truly are. And it is inevitable that respect for freedom will be expressed in a more relative way in our conversations and activities with them. And because they've been given this freedom and this love, hopefully that will stay alive in them. And as they grow up, this freedom and love stays with them, and at some stage may turn into a question about what the purpose of life is, or who they really are. But we shouldn't try to impose that at all on our children. Because to impose that would be not to respect their freedom. I think you should be doing this. The fine print beneath that statement is, I think you're a finite being, and not an unintelligent finite being that needs my intervention. It's well known at a more relative level. If a 3-year-old is walking near a swimming pool, the last thing you say to them as a parent is, don't do that, you might fall in. Because you subliminally suggest something. Chances are the child will fall in. You say, hey sweetheart, do you want to play football? So you don't presume that they're stupid. You presume that they love to enjoy activities or whatever. It's a very subtle thing, but it sends a very profound message to the child. I consider you stupid, or I consider you intelligence itself. That goes very deeply into the make of a child.